What's up, guys? This is Bradley alongside Zach, Dawson, and our special guest, Henry, for the second time this season. We're going to be doing this Steelers Ravens preview today. First of all, Henry, thanks for joining us, and how are you doing today?
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited. I think looking back at the season, if you had told me that the Steelers-Ravens game in this week would have this big of stakes with starting quarterbacks at least fully healthy, and as a Steelers fan, the Steelers having clinched the playoffs with 3 games to go, I would take that in a heartbeat. So even coming off of last week's pretty bad loss against the Eagles, I think it's really exciting to have this game in front of us on Saturday.
This is such a huge game too. Like the winner of this game is set up so well to win the division. So this game, the implications are through the roof, and I'm just glad it's in Baltimore this time. We have Lamar playing, healthy roster. Like I'm super pumped.
Yeah, this is going to be the first time Lamar Jackson ever plays the Steelers in Baltimore with fans. Just crazy stuff. Also, I think the first time Lamar will play the Steelers twice in the same season. So all that stuff is just crazy. So Steelers are 10-4, Ravens are 9-5. It's going to be 4:30 p.m. on Fox. I don't think the Ravens and Steelers have ever played on Fox. It's going to be Kevin Burkhardt and Tom Brady on the call, so they're number one crew. It's going to be 34 degrees. I checked the wind. It's going to be a little windy, like about like 14, 15 miles per hour. So we'll see what that does to Justin Tucker. I bet Boswell will have no problems. But Ravens are favored by 6.5 in this one. They were favored by 3.5 in the first game against the Steelers. So when you equate like the home field advantage and everything, it's honestly not that much more than the first game, if like the same in terms of how Vegas feels about this game. Over under is going to be 46.5. Ravens are going to wear the all purple uniforms, which with this game being on Fox and the uniforms, this game's not really feeling like a classic Ravens Steelers game. I don't think the Ravens have ever worn all purple against the Steelers. I feel like it's usually just like a purple on white thing. So that's interesting as well. Steelers lead the series 36-25, and of course, the last meeting was that 18-16 Steelers win when the Ravens had 3 turnovers, I believe. So that one was not fun. Zach, what are your initial thoughts going into this game?
Well, last meeting was so ugly, and really every game is so ugly. Like Henry was over here last preview saying, oh, this is the one where the Ravens need their get back. And we were like, you know what? If Steelers fans saying it, we gotta believe it. And once again, we get humbled. So I'm thinking it's gonna happen again. I'm not very confident going into this. I'm not really sure why. I've heard a lot of people. I loved what Sutton said on our last podcast, like a pride game, how Roquan's talking about it, where it's like bring your manhood, everything. It's all the stakes, but personally, I feel no confidence in the ability to win it just because, 1-9 against them in the last 10 or whatever that record is. I mean, how can you confidently as a Ravens fan walk into this one like, yeah, we're going to win. We're going to win pretty well. Like, how can you say that? That's crazy.
It's a really good point, Zach. I kind of feel the same. Like obviously, I have confidence in this team, but given the recent memory and history against the Steelers, it's very hard as a Ravens fan. And I think we can all vouch for that to realistically have confidence that, oh yeah, we're going to beat the Steelers this week. Like finally, this is the time. So I don't know. We're going to see what happens, but I was very curious to see what the line would open up at. And a -6.5 favorite for the Ravens is crazy to me. That is just bizarre. All these games are always like 15-13, 14-12, it seems like. So the fact that they give Baltimore 6.5 in this game and the over-under set at 46, I don't know, man. Vegas is seeing a little bit different of a pattern in this game. So I'm curious to see if that actually is how it plays out. And if it does play out that way, it'll be a really interesting game.
Yeah, I mean, I think from talking to you guys, I start to feel more confident about the Steelers. But I had a miserable watch of the Eagles game on Sunday without George Pickens. The offense is not built to do anything without him. Arthur Smith describes the offense as an old pickup truck that needs time to warm up. But it's like, dude, it's week 16, division on the line. Like, we do not need time to warm up at this point. Like, we should have some other things going. But the receiving weapons outside of Pickens, you got Pat Freiermuth. He's been big down the stretch. But out wide, it's like Van Jefferson, Ben Skoranek, Scotty Miller, Mike Williams occasionally. He's still, I guess, he's like an old pickup truck too. Maybe he hasn't quite warmed up into the offense. So it's tough to see where a lot of the offensive production will come from. And when you talk about the Steelers, like voodoo magic or whatever, a lot of times it comes on the defensive side, but it's not coming as much on the offensive side. And when you lose Pickens, you also lose some of those like pass interference balls that maybe don't show up in the stat sheet too. So, I think we're on opposite ends here. I'm not feeling super confident. I know you guys aren't feeling super confident, but at least the stakes are there.
Yeah, and I feel like that first Ravens Steelers game, all four of us were not feeling confident either in our teams. So it's probably just how the rivalry goes. I'm gonna start with the Ravens injury report first in this one. Rashad Bateman did not practice today, Thursday. With that foot injury, he has a boot on his foot. So it's not looking like he's going to play. That's not good. Aguilar, who has been not practicing all week with a concussion, was limited today, Thursday. And Harbaugh said there's a chance he can clear concussion protocol before Saturday. So if Bateman and Aguilar both can't play, that would be tough. That'd be something we're going to talk about later in terms of, we talked about Tez Walker on Tuesday, and we'll see, what Tylan Wallace is able to do. Jalen Arbor-Davis is also not practicing. And then Falele's limited along with Owe and Ardarius Washington. So we'll see about that. I think Owe and Washington probably will play. But let's shift it over to the Steelers injury report. And Henry, I'll just let you take this one away here.
Yeah, so the Steelers, at least before Bateman pops up on the injury report, it felt like the Steelers and the Ravens were trending in different directions in terms of injuries. The Ravens coming off a late bye, chance to get people healthy. The Steelers having their best offensive player, George Pickens, with like a grade 2 hamstring injury. He's missed the last few. Hasn't practiced. He was running in a straight line today at practice. So whatever that means, he didn't have a helmet. And then of course TJ Watt got injured at the end of the Steelers-Eagles game on Sunday. And it looked pretty bad initially. Turned out to be like a low ankle injury. And I think he's trending towards playing. He's obviously not going to be at 100%. Fingers crossed there. Dante Jackson got injured last game against the Eagles. I think he's trending towards playing. He gets injured like every game. They cut to him. He's grabbing shoulder, whatever. He's lying down on the ground doing the Patrick Queen thing. Deshaun Elliott missed the last game. I think he's trending towards playing. He posted something on his Instagram story of him like dapping up TJ Watt, and so it seemed like maybe they're looking to play. Justin Fields got maybe a concussion against the Eagles. Sort of a late slide, got hit in the head. Little whiplash there. He hasn't been practicing this week. I don't think he's going to play. As you remember, at the end of the last game, he had a nice like 8-yard run or whatever to set the Steelers up for the game clinching first down. So he's a bit of a player there, and those are sort of the main hits on the Steelers injury report. So I think with 3 games in 10, 11 days, whatever it is, there's obviously the wanting to be more conservative, but I think winning the division, having a home playoff game would be so huge for the Steelers that maybe they're a little more inclined to get these guys in the game, clinch the division this week, as opposed to the Ravens, where I feel like that home field advantage maybe is a little less important and is less of a sure thing, even if you do win this week.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. Being late in the season to where we are, that's obviously a factor if these guys can go or not. But given the magnitude of this game, I think if there's anyone on either side of the ball that can even step out in the field and play football this week, I think they're going to make it happen just because of how important this is to each team respectively. And I don't like seeing the Rashad Bateman injury pop up later in this week or in the middle of this week. And now the report comes out that he has a boot on in the locker room post-practice, even though he wasn't out there, of course. So that's not encouraging. It looks like he's probably not going to play. I got to hope for his sake and our sake that it's not the same foot injury that he's been dealing with since entering the league. Hopefully it's not a re-aggravation of that injury, because who knows what could happen there if that's the case. But I think obviously he's not going to play. We'll see if Nelson Alley can get out there. Hopefully he can, because if we miss 2 wide receivers. That'd be pretty drastic measure in this matchup, which we all know goes either one way or the other. So I don't know. I think most of these guys are going to play. I think this team's trending in a pretty healthy direction, but this would be kind of perfect situation for your trade deadline acquisition to be on the field and playing for you, given that 2 of your wide receivers could potentially be out in this game. So this would be a nice time to have Deontay Johnson here. Unfortunately, that's not the situation. Stuff's been trending in a bad place there. So kind of sucks because that's what I would imagine he was brought into for this exact situation, just like this. And unfortunately, the Ravens are not going to be able to benefit from that this week. So we just got to hope that these other guys that are on there can play, and the Ravens can make up for their losses this Saturday in a really tough matchup.
I just want to highlight the one dude that we hope can really deliver in this kind of game, Tez Walker. He had some big moment last week, and if you're going to list Bateman, Aguilar, and Deontay as players that might not play this week, like, you're going to need someone like Tez to step up, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the offense does.
Yeah, it's always exciting in these rivalries having like young players stepping up, getting introduced. I know the Steelers had Nick Herbig in the last matchup forcing a fumble, introducing himself. But it's like, if you can imagine this game on your team's like Super Bowl DVD, and like, this is the chance for each team to really start their run, and I think it's exciting to like see how that plays out.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, we'll see what the Ravens can do at receiver this week. The Bateman injury, honestly, now that we know he's not playing, it's honestly more concerning for down the stretch. I mean, having a boot on is definitely not a good sign. But we'll go ahead and get into the Steelers offense versus the Ravens defense now. So Steelers offense is 10th in points per game with 24. They're averaging over 320 yards per game total. That's 18th. Passing yards per game, they're 24th, and rush offense, they're 10th. In terms of Ravens defense, obviously the big turnaround with moving Kyle Hamilton back to deep safety along with Ardarius Washington and benching Marcus Williams and cutting Eddie Jackson. So the Ravens were like last in every metric besides rush defense. Now they are 22nd in points allowed per game after being 31st just 4 weeks ago. Total yards allowed per game, they're 17th. Pass yards allowed, they're still 31st. They were 32nd, but it's going to be a slow climb back up. And then obviously they are still first in rushing. We'll go with Henry here to give us, what are you looking at in this matchup initially?
Yeah, so I mean, all eyes are on George Pickens, whether he plays or doesn't. If he doesn't play, we've seen the last few weeks the Steelers having a really tough time moving the ball in any capacity, and not getting a lot of help from their run game, to be honest. They have them here at 10th in the league in rush yards per game, and that's not because they're extremely efficient at running the ball. It's because they just run the ball a lot. They're probably like one of the bottom 3 teams in like efficiency running the ball, and you can see that when they're running tosses on a lot of plays, and the tosses aren't breaking out for stuff. And they're rookies on the offensive line, these young pieces on the offensive line that I think we built up ahead of the last matchup, and now they're sort of looking like, yeah, these are young players on the offensive line. This is like a 4th round rookie playing guard. You kind of saw that against the Eagles. They've built up their trenches in a way that the Steelers are aspiring to do, and you could just see it was a total mismatch there. So if Pickens is playing, you got those vertical shots, you got chances at pass interference down the field. It allows you to free up someone like a Mike Williams, who isn't going to be like the one threat on a 3rd and 7 if it's just him out there. And it avoids some of these like 3rd down throws to Scotty Miller that are just like double covered, and you're just hoping to like get something down the field. That's not really a play you're going for. Pat Freiermuth's been huge in the red zone. He's someone to watch for sure. He had a great contested catch against the Eagles last week. But really, it's all eyes on Pickens. I don't have a ton of confidence in the Steelers offense to move without him, especially considering the Ravens have shored up their secondary. And were you guys without Roquan last time we played you guys?
What game did Roquan miss?
Chargers game.
Wow.
Okay.
Ooh, okay.
He was out the Chargers game when we were out in LA. I'm pretty sure he played in the first Pittsburgh matchup.
Did he?
I think.
Did he get injured against the Steelers?
I think he got injured.
Was there something? Because we had Darnell Washington,
That's
a few
right.
like seam routes.
Yeah, Roquan got
middle.
injured.
Yeah.
I remember Malik Harrison coming in at the end of the game, and it wasn't
Yeah.
But
And the other thing is, I know you guys have moved Kyle Hamilton back into more of that traditional safety role, trying to eliminate some of these big plays. But if Pickens is out, you probably have a little more of a chance to move him down into the box if that's something you want to do, and really make some havoc plays instead of sort of just cleaning up the mess on the back end, making sure nothing pops off the top. You have a chance to really impact the game and put a real imprint on this rivalry.
Yeah, I think it's a good point too, because I think with this specific matchup, it's truly all eyes on George Pickens if he plays or not, and if he does, to what capacity he can, do his normal routine in. So I think the defensive turnaround for the Ravens has obviously been phenomenal. Talking before the first matchup, it was a completely different story. This defense was kind of just lifeless at that point, and now since against some pretty tough opponents, they've kind of refound footing and kind of found a rhythm finally to this point in the season. So that's encouraging nonetheless. But either way, this Steelers offense still is potent and they can make stuff happen, especially if they have George Pickens in the middle of the realm, just doing everything that he can do because he's a fantastic player. He's the best offensive weapon in Pittsburgh by far. And he really elevates that offense if he's playing. And if he's not, it really hurts. So I think that's truly the main focus going into this game.
Steelers offense had 2 drives in the second half last week. 2.
Ooh, I saw that. Hard Knocks was really pushing that narrative. That was pretty crazy. But I want to name 2 stats here. The Ravens defense, the last 4 games, averages a total of 269 yards allowed. That's top 5. And then the last game that they played the Steelers, they allowed a third down completion percentage of 36.4%. I believe that's the lowest they've allowed all year. And that was kind of the point where the Ravens defense, we were doing this pod, and even just as a regular fan, you could say the defense looked a little different today. Like it was in the better direction, no touchdowns. Sure, it was 6 field goals, but no touchdowns. You had something to hang your hat on, and it was good enough for your offense to, if they played anything like normal, to go out there and win the game. So you got to point to a few things. The defense, though, like just those stats, pretty impressive. Like if you can be top 5 in these last 4 games and then go into a game where the Steelers offense has been struggling a little bit, and even last week they get a little knocked down, I think the confidence in the defensive room is probably high. I think the only difference would be if you could force maybe a turnover to get, the offensive spark going, just to help the other side because they're not seeing much. So in a game where we might not have Bateman to get us a big play touchdown, we're going to need a spark at some point in the game. And I think the defense could try and do that and really shake this game up. I have a lot of confidence in this matchup as this side of it, as we'll talk about the Ravens offense and the Steelers defense. But this side of it, I'm really intrigued because it's really been going in the right direction for the Ravens. And this would be a good team to be another test for them.
Yeah, the Ravens have basically had, like you mentioned, Zach, a top 5 defense since that first Steelers game. I believe that was the first game that the Ravens moved Kyle Hamilton back to deep safety and held the Steelers to no touchdowns. Like you said, the 36 completion percentage on third down. This is what I would say as a Ravens fan. I'm definitely less concerned and less thinking about this side of the ball than the other side of the ball because of the Ravens' inability to perform on offense against the Steelers in the past. But yeah, with this side of things, I mean, you guys mentioned it as well, but like Pickens playing versus Pickens not playing, I don't know how the Steelers can score 2 touchdowns in this game without Pickens. I know they traded for Mike Williams, who hasn't done much. And like Henry was talking about, like before the show, it's kind of just like Scotty Miller and like Van Jefferson. They'd really kind of have to rely on that run game, which they have done a lot this year. Not as efficient in the run game, like Henry mentioned, but they just ground and pound and kind of like nick away at you with Harris and Warren. And that's another thing with Jaylen Warren might be the most frustrating Steelers player to play against in recent memory because like it's not like he's Saquon Barkley out there, but he's just like a bowling ball. I don't know if you guys remember Thomas Rawls on the Seahawks, but he really reminds me of him. And like, it's not just the Ravens, but like no one tackles him like on their first chance. He just bounces off people, and that's sort of what I'm looking at is just like being able to tackle Najee and Jalen Warren in this one, and just seeing if the Ravens can generate any pass rush at all. They've been a very conservative since bringing in Dean Pease back, and it's worked. We always talk about the bend but don't break. That's what Mike McDonald sort of preached, to kind of just let them move the ball in between the 20s and force field goals and turnovers. It worked in the first game. The Ravens offense just only scored 16 points. So we'll look for that as well to see if the Ravens switch it up and bring any blitzes or anything like that as well.
Yeah.
One more thing. Oh, no. You can go ahead, Henry.
I was going to say the Steelers' red zone offense continues to be pretty bad. It was something that you kind of noticed when Russ came in for Fields, that red zone offense took a little bit of a dip, and you're wondering, like, when is that going to get going? Fields looks like he's not going to be able to play. They haven't really been using him in the red zone that much. One player would be want to make sure I mention is Calvin Austin, receiver for the Steelers.
Mhm.
He's come alive the last few weeks. He's developed a pretty good connection with Russell Wilson. If you saw Hard Knocks, he was a Russell Wilson fan.
Yeah, that's
growing
awesome.
up, and people sort of think he's maybe fitting into that like Tyler Lockett sort of role back when Russ was in Seattle. So he's definitely a playmaker to watch and has been a big contributor on offense recently.
Yeah, I wanted to note that without Michael Pierce, the last time that the Ravens played the Steelers, Pittsburgh's rushing attack wasn't, groundbreaking, but it was really good. Najee had 63 yards. Jalen Warren had 40 yards on 9 carries. And then Fields gamed us, right? Like at the end. So, I mean, they had a presence, and I think someone like Michael Pierce being here is going to be a weird difference maker. You might not see as many explosive plays, at least in the inside.
Yeah, it's a pretty good point.
Yeah. That's a good point. Michael Pierce is someone who I think Ravens fans almost kind of forgot about when he was injured because of that solid depth that the Ravens do have on the D-line, but having him back is huge. So let's switch it over now to the other side of the ball, Ravens offense versus Steelers defense. Looking at these offensive stats for the Ravens is pretty insane. Points per game, they're third with 30. Total yards per game, 424. That's first. Pass yards per game, they're third with 246. And rush yards per game, they're second now behind, I guess, the Eagles with 178. A stat from Aaron Schatz on Twitter, who is known as the one guy who voted for Josh Allen for MVP last year. He's a big like DVOA analytics guy, and it's very interesting the stuff that he talks about. So he said that the Ravens are number 2 in DVOA offense in late and close, which basically means any play in the second half or overtime when the score is within 8 points, a one-score game. So the Ravens are number 2 in that department. Only the Packers have a better offense. So we're looking at this game possibly being close and late, and the Ravens have a great offense in those situations. However, the Ravens' defense is the worst in late and close situations. So in terms of the other side of the ball, that's something that we've been accustomed to the last couple of years with the Ravens' defense. But in terms of the Steelers' defense, they are 6th in points allowed with 19, 9th in total yards allowed with 317. They have the 22nd pass defense, but the 4th rushing defense. Something that I wanted to mention is the Steelers' defense sort of swishing from the earlier part of the season to this past couple 3-4 games. Weeks 1 through 11, they allowed 16 points per game, 215 passing yards per game, just 9 passing touchdowns in those 11 games, and a 48% in the red zone. Just in the last 4 games, they're now allowing 26 points per game. That pass yards per game is up above 240. 7 passing touchdowns in the last 4 weeks, and then 61% in the red zone. Those numbers probably could be a little skewed because of the Bengals game, but still, you also have the Eagles last week. Steelers defense has not been as good recently. So, Henry, I'll let you start again with your initial thoughts on this side of the ball.
Yeah, I definitely think among Steelers fans, people are starting to notice like some cracks developing in the Steelers defense, but I would almost think a lot of those are a reflection of how stagnant the offense has been, especially out of the gate. And I feel like when I'm watching games in the NFL, I'm not like an analyst, but I feel like teams have like a certain amount of stops they're going to get per game. And when you not use up, but when you get like 8 stops in the first half or something, 6 stops in the first half, and your offense hasn't scored a touchdown, it's like these dudes just keep getting back on the field, back on the field, back on the field. And I think you saw that against the Eagles, where it was a 3-point game at halftime. You got a bunch of stops at the beginning of the game. You forced TJ Watt out of forced turnover. Then we didn't do anything off of that. They muffed a punt. Right after that, we got a field goal. And then, TJ Watt has a drive-ending sack deep in their territory. And you get all that in the first half. And then in the second half, since your defense was like worn out the entire time, plus you fumbled, you end up with 2 offensive possessions, and the Eagles have a 10.5-minute drive to end the game. 22 plays, like 80-something yards, 10 minutes, just kneeled it out, like pretty much on the goal line. And the Steelers' defense, their turnover differential is, like, I think best in the league, maybe. I meant the Steelers team thing as a whole. They're forcing a lot of turnovers. We saw that last time the Steelers and the Ravens played, with those big splash plays, forcing those fumbles and getting that interception. And they're getting some people back. They're getting Deshaun Elliott back, hopefully, this week. They didn't have Highsmith last time Steelers played the Ravens. They're going to have him this week. TJ Watt's going to be injured. I think, especially if Bateman's not playing, the Steelers really got cooked by A.J. Brown. He was really hard to stop. The Ravens don't have someone like that. Zay Flowers hasn't been the most consistent against the Steelers, and he's not this big, like, physical threat that A.J. Brown is. I think Joey Porter Jr. did a pretty good job hanging with him last time. So I think the Steelers' defensive woes are a little more of a reflection on the offense not being able to get anything going for themselves, and the defense having to be on the field a whole lot.
Yeah, I think when you look at this specific matchup, when Baltimore's offense is against Pittsburgh's defense, I think every single stat, metric, I think everything's out of the window, because this is always a game where the Ravens unfortunately come in and just forget how to play safe, complementary football. I mean, we've seen this so many times. The second play of the game, in the last matchup, there was a Derrick Henry fumble, which is completely out of norm. And obviously we went on to lose that game. So I think you can look at, the stats and the matchup, metrics all you want, but I think it's truly out the window. And I think whoever wins this game is the team that has the least amount of mistakes. And that obviously makes sense for a lot of games, but specifically this game, turnovers have been a big, big reason as to why Pittsburgh has dominated the Ravens over the last 10 games, because the Ravens, I feel like every time we play Pittsburgh, we have at least 3 turnovers. It always happens. It's the most weird voodoo magic, creepy thing ever. It's wild. And this game, the Ravens cannot turn the ball over. I mean, it's literally beating a drum. You cannot turn the ball over. If the Ravens turn the ball over twice or more in this game, they will lose, because Pittsburgh is a very physical team. I believe they have the most forced turnovers in the NFL this season, I believe. And they're a team that we saw this week in Todd Monken in practice was really working with the receivers for ball protection. Like, hold this football. Pittsburgh is going to come and punch this out. Like, that's how they play football. And it's awesome, but it sucks for us. So you got to protect the football. You got to know and expect Pittsburgh coming for you to punch it out and force their turnovers. And I mean, that's really it. You just don't get cute in this matchup. We kind of talked about it in a pod a few days ago. Don't get cute in this matchup. Just play your brand of football. Play hard-nosed, north-south running Baltimore Ravens football, and just protect it. That's all you got to do to win this game. I really want to see the Ravens run through this team once and for all, and finally put, those recent hauntings to rest, because it's getting old to this point.
Yeah, speaking of running through it, I mean, I wanted to touch on the rushing stats. Last time we played the Steelers, 19 total carries for 124 yards. If you remember what I just talked about with the Steelers, they had 34 carries for 122 yards. 15 more carries, 2 less yards. I mean, we dominated that game in that way. And sure, we start off with that Derrick Henry fumble, but that's like one of the beginning notes of, like, why didn't you go back to it? If Derrick Henry has 13 carries for 65 yards, 5 yards per carry, like, what went wrong, right? Well, we also have 2 Tucker missed field goals. I mean, this was a big problem at that point, and then it kept adding on. Sure, last week, 5 extra points being made. I didn't get to watch those extra points. So I'm not entirely sure if they were, straight down the middle, beautiful stuff, or if it was like, okay, it's in. Okay, good. I have no idea. I'll look back, but
They're pretty
honestly,
normal.
okay, cool.
Quick note that they were all pretty centered. They were all really. There was not one that I was like, oh boy, like they were all right down the middle.
Cool. So it goes into the point that Tucker really needs to have the confidence this game. I'm sure the Steelers are gonna, get a few stops, later in their side of the field, and Ravens are gonna need to capitalize with some points because 6 points was the difference last game, and you need to have this win. Isaiah Likely was our leading receiver last game, 4 catches, 75 yards. Like, I'm not saying that's very random. He dominated week 1, but Isaiah Likely is not usually near that mark. He's not usually near the top 5 receiving for the team right now. And that game, he kind of comes alive. Maybe his name is called a little bit more with Bateman out. And just to get some more players that can create for the offense, maybe Justice Hill is called a little bit more, not necessarily in screenplays, but just getting him out and trying to get, extra yards against their defenders. There's a few things that I can point at. I love that Aaron Schatz kind of stuff where it's a close game and they play really well. But even if they have a great team and they play really well in those close games, even like the last game, you miss out on 6 points to win the game. So this matchup has to be different. They have to. I can see them being a very aggressive, angry team going into this, needing a win, wanting a win more than the Steelers would. And I think with the injuries for Watt and Pickens, they're in the same boat as us with the, 3 games in 11 days. If we turn around and they get a little more banged up this game, and they lose, the next game they might be hurt a little bit more and really as a team get hurt more. And our Ravens being as healthy as they are, I think they need to win this game, and I think the offense can really spark something, whether that is with Likely or Justice or whoever steps up. I have some confidence in this side of the ball too.
Yeah, and like I'm just really interested to see what the Ravens do with most likely out Bateman. Um I it's we're feeling decently confident in Tez Walker with his one offensive snap. It just I feel like it can't really be overlooked that like your one chance, you like make a nice toe tap touchdown, like fully aware of your surroundings. And he's great on special teams too. I think it's gonna be really big if Aguilar can play in this one. But yeah, Zach, I like what you said. The Ravens are probably gonna utilize Likely a lot more with Bateman out. I mean, he's basically a receiver, so we'll see how that happens and plays out as well. But really, it's just going to be the Ravens committing to the run and not abandoning that if they're maybe down 3 or 6 or 7 or 10 or whatever. Just sticking with that.
I think a bigger thing
go
there
ahead.
is like not having the penalties. I know we went back after the Steelers-Ravens game last time and looked at, okay, well, how does Derrick Henry, like, you didn't have a carry in the 4th quarter, like you only had 13. It was like, all right, well, you had like holding penalties and multiple drives that put you in 1st, 2nd, and 20, something like that, where it's not feasible to be running the ball to Derrick Henry there in theory, or like to even have him on the field because he's not going to be as much of a receiving threat as Justice Hill is going to be. So I look at it as like, hold on to the ball, stay out of your own way there, and then stay out of your own way with the penalties. And with that on paper, it's like you have a much higher chance of scoring points, doing anything on offense compared to the Steelers, where it's not like, not that the Steelers aren't committing penalties, but it's like this offense just is not like built to put up a lot of points here.
Yeah, I think me and the boys have all mutually agreed, Henry, that it's week 16 now that we're going into, and the Ravens are still by far the most penalized team. And I think we've all agreed that that's not going to change. We kind of just have to expect it going into these games on a sad note. And you can hope that you get less than like 6, but like these Ravens have literally been getting like 10 penalties a game for like over 100 yards. So I think it's in a weird way just part of their game at this point. And it sounds awful to say that, but it is what it is. Like we can't expect that to change. The Steelers are obviously a more disciplined team than the Ravens. They have a really, really good head coach, of course, and they don't make mistakes. Like it just feels like when you watch Steelers games and just any game really, like with the Steelers, not specifically a Ravens Steelers matchup, they just don't make mistakes and things fall their way. Like it feels like it always just plays into the deck of cards for Steelers, and it must be so lucky because for us, on the other hand, it does not. So I think 100% you're correct. You got to stay out of your own way if you're Baltimore, and keep penalties away as much as you can. But at the end of the day, this is how they are this season. It's just kind of part of the game, and we got to hope that they can just play the cleanest game as possible on Saturday.
It's gonna be a chippy one.
Yeah. I mean, it was really chippy that first game. So, but yeah, Dawson, as you mentioned, the Ravens, we were kind of hoping it would change a little bit after the bye, and the Ravens still had 12 penalties for 112 yards against the Giants. So probably not going to change. Let's go ahead and get into score predictions. Let's see. Let's have Zach go first here.
Okay. We just did this whole preview, and I'm like looking at my score prediction like, wow. I don't feel the same way. Now, I think I'm still going to say it, which makes me so mad. But I have the Steelers winning 24-20. You can hear the disappointment in my voice. I'm looking at all the stats, right? This stat right above it that we just talked about, that Brad mentioned, kind of almost like a little swept by, and we didn't mention it. Weeks 12 through 15 for the Steelers defense, 61% opponent red zone percentage. Ravens were number one for a long time. I'm not sure if they're still number one, but my goodness, talk about a big red circle around that for the offensive game plan. Get us down there and put the ball in the end zone. Don't even use Justin Tucker. Don't let him kick the field goals and miss them. Get some points. I mean, we've seen a whole different level of passing offense with this Lamar Bateman connection and really breaking stuff open. When does it start with someone like Zay? When does it start with someone like Tez, where the deep shots are taken and given to other people? Sure, Bateman's a different route runner than those guys, but like if 7 opponent passing touchdowns have happened in these last 4 weeks for them, like, is there a shot or two that we take to someone like Tez, to someone like Tylan Wallace? There's probably opportunities in this game where we can blow it open if we get a 2nd and 2, 2nd and 3, and get a chance to take a shot a few times and mess up the Steelers defense. Even with that, I can't put a big confidence marker for the Ravens offense. I think Monken put it the best way, talking about TJ Watt maybe not playing. It's just easier if you think he is playing. And I just think he's the game breaker. I just think he is in this matchup. He gives us nightmares, right? He's the guy that changes it every single time. And last time it was Herbig, but still, we're used to seeing TJ's name with that. And I think if he goes, if Pickens can somehow go, maybe he's a game time decision like Henry had kind of told us a little. But even then, I think they can do enough to win this game if they have a fully healthy, well, not fully healthy team, but a healthy enough team. I think they can still creep out with one.
All right, we've heard enough from Zach. Get him out of here. I think I'm just kidding. All love Zach. I don't know. This game is really tough to predict, and by all means, I'm gonna tell everybody these are our predictions on a weekly basis. If we were a betting person, if we had to put money in the game, this is what we would have to bet. Is we're picking money lines. So I think this is finally a game that the Ravens do put the demons to rest with Pittsburgh. I don't think it's a pretty game by any means. I think it's a low-scoring game. I have the Ravens winning 20-14. I do think it comes down to who makes the least amount of mistakes, and I think the Ravens this week are going to play a very disciplined team. I was very disciplined brand of football, and I was very encouraged to see Todd Monken, the videos in practice this week, kind of being really stern on like ball security and like, this team is coming for us. They're going to make us make mistakes. Don't allow them to. So that seems to be like kind of the, I would say, commitment in the locker room this week going into this matchup. And I do think the Ravens are going to execute that on Saturday. It's really hard, like I said, to think about a Ravens win in this game, but I do think this is one they come away with. So 2014 Ravens win.
Yeah, I guess we go into my prediction here. I have the Ravens winning as well. I predicted the Ravens win last time, of course, and that didn't happen. I think a little bit with the the injury situation and the way both the teams are trending, and the Ravens being able to play at home. And also Lamar's like first time playing the Steelers twice in one season. You know, Lamar's a really smart player, and I think that works to his advantage, playing the Steelers twice in the same season, getting a little bit more of that rhythm down as opposed to it playing into the Steelers, because we play them every year, and you're able to like game plan. I feel a little more. I think getting a few more of those reps for Lamar will be big. I have the Ravens winning 24-16. I don't feel like the Steelers offense is able to generate like multiple touchdown drives. Of course, you can get set up by turnovers, but the Steelers have done that multiple times as of recent, and then they're kicking field goals, or they're getting the ball at midfield and they're punting. Or we're punting at midfield down 14 in the fourth quarter. So I'm not super confident in that. I will say the one thing Dawson brought up about the Ravens playing not to make mistakes, and that seems almost like opposite messaging from probably what the Steelers are getting, where it is like you're trying to muddy the waters, you're doing this. And I think in a rivalry game, I might be leaning more towards a team that is playing with more aggression and more playing maybe a little more free than like, hold on to the ball, don't make mistakes, don't mess up, don't mess up, don't mess up. We can win if we don't mess up. I don't know if that's like the best mindset to go into it with, but at the same time, with the way the Ravens are playing and with the way the Steelers have been playing, I think a Ravens win here kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
No, don't even start yet, Brad. He has like some devil magic of his own. Henry did this last time. He did the negative jinx stuff, dude. He's doing it again.
Not buying it.
But it's the same reason
I can't buy it.
You guys are disappointed, like very, very disappointed when the Ravens lose to the Steelers. And there's a reason for that. It's because you have multiple time MVP at quarterback. It's because really like your team is probably better. So this is not like unfounded like Steelers like devil magic. It's just like it is how it stacks up on paper. Vegas sees this a 6.5 point spread, and then the over under is like 46 or something, which I don't think the Steelers are scoring 23 points. So someone else is going to need to carry that weight, and that's probably the Ravens.
Yeah. I feel similar to all three of you guys. I know Zach picked a loss. And I said this on the Q&A with Sutton. Even though I do feel like the Ravens have a better team, just from a pure vibe standpoint, it's really hard to imagine the Ravens winning this game. Like, I can't picture it. I can easily picture like Deshaun Elliott like running around on the field after the Steelers win on like a walk-off players. Like, I can't imagine the Ravens winning. Despite that, I'm still going to take them just because of, Dawson mentioned this. Like, when we pick the games, we probably have a little bias because of being Ravens fans, but we are truly picking, like, if we had to bet $1,000 on this game, like, who would we take? And like, I would take the Ravens in this one. I'm going to go 21-17. So like, all four of us think it's going to be closer than Vegas does. Vegas thinks the Ravens are going to win by about 7. I think the Ravens find a way to score 3 touchdowns in this one and keep Tucker off the field. And I do think the Steelers, and I think Pickens maybe has like a 50% chance to play. So I'm kind of like basing my score off of not sure if he's going to play or not. And I'll give the Steelers 17. Maybe they find a way to score 2 touchdowns. Maybe they score 1 touchdown and kick 3 or 4 field goals. But I think just the Ravens' talent on the offensive side of the ball, even without Bateman, is too much with just Lamar, how well he's playing, and facing the Steelers defense twice in the same season, which, Henry was talking about. He's never done that. And I feel like it sort of gives him the first chance of his career to make adjustments against the Steelers, and him and Monken can figure out what they need to do and what they shouldn't do this time. So I'll go with the Ravens win as well.
It's pretty good.
And I don't think we've mentioned it this podcast. I know maybe Sutton brought it up last time. Or no, you might have, Brad. Lamar hasn't played in Baltimore with a legitimate crowd against the Steelers.
Yeah.
2020 was the last one.
Yeah, there's 4,000 people there.
Yeah, and COVID stuff was happening, right? So, it was like, a person every 10 seats, it looked like, in the stands. So,
yeah,
that'll be a fun difference maker for sure.
Yeah, it'll definitely – this game's going to feel like I'm a lot more excited for this game than I was for the first one. I mean, the first one was like 1 p.m. CBS game. This one's like a primetime 4:30 game on Fox. So like I'm kind of excited how like different it's gonna feel. Ravens wearing all purple. I'm excited for this one.
Like the whole vibes around the game, like just feel like one of those Ravens prime like the Bengals game. Like it just feels like this is a game that Baltimore is gonna neck and neck with Pittsburgh for, but in the end, like we're gonna win, we're gonna celebrate. Like I feel like it's meant to be. Like it's hard to predict us winning, and like Brad said, it's hard to see like in your mind the Ravens winning this game, but at the same time, all the little things around it does feel like a Ravens win.
Yeah, I guess it technically is prime time, like because it's Saturday and all.
It
But like, let's make sure the team knows it's prime time because they play better in prime time. So let's make sure they know.
Make sure Mark Andrews knows it's prime time.
Exactly.
One thing I'm not looking forward to is having Tom Brady.
Come on now.
Whoa.
Okay. He's a huge Lamar fan, and as a Steelers fan, like I think Tom Brady called a Steelers game for the first time last week, and it was like, oh my, we're getting like worked, we're getting dominated. And you got like Tom Brady like telling you about it. It's like this is not what I want to watch.
Oh, I see.
So we don't need Lamar doing all. Oh, look at Lamar, man, he's my favorite player. It's like, all right, stop it.
I can't wait.
I know Brady's a pretty big advocate for Lamar MVP, or at least he's kind of pushed it a little.
Yeah, I'm very excited because I will say I don't think Nance and Romo are that much of fans of Lamar. I'm not going to say they dislike him, but like they're really talking up Josh Allen last week, whereas Tom Brady is. I really do think Lamar's his favorite player, so it'll be fun to see that. So, yeah. Anyone have any final thoughts?
No, just Ravens. Please win.
Yeah,
please
win. Please win, Ravens.
Henry, just spare us a win for once.
There's something I completely forgot.
TJ Watson sacks and
cancel that devil magic just for one.
There's something I wanted to mention that I completely forgot, and it's like Dawson, Zach, and I have talked about like we don't really care what seed the Ravens are. So like in terms of the playoffs, this game doesn't really matter. But I will say if the Ravens lose this game, they're not doing anything in the playoffs. Like from a pure like confidence standpoint, like you have to win this game to go into the playoffs, knowing that you can like make hay or whatever. But like in terms of obviously the Ravens can win the division if they win this game, but I think the division is less important than like what this game does for your confidence moving forward. So
yeah,
we'll see how that goes.
So you're saying, wait, I'm kind of. You're saying that a win would matter less? I'm confused.
I'm saying in terms of like pure standings, like a win doesn't help the Ravens that much. Yeah, maybe we get a home playoff game out of it, but like 5 seed is a solid position to be in. You're playing the worst division winner. I'm saying from like a confidence, psychological standpoint, this game is very important because if the Ravens lose, I mean, how would they think and how would we think that they can do anything in the playoffs when like the one, so with the Ravens struggle playoffs, Chiefs, Steelers. So if they struggle against the Steelers one more time going into the playoffs, it's like how would we think that they can finally win 4 games in a row in the playoffs?
With a solid chance there that you might have to run into the Chiefs or the Steelers in the playoffs. On the road if you don't win.
Yeah.
And I think as a Steelers fan, it's almost like the opposite, where like my confidence isn't like sky high with this team, and it'd be great to have like a home playoff game with fans. We haven't had that since the 2017 season. So just from that perspective, it's like you would love to have that. Obviously, we're already in the playoffs. I think that makes a pretty big difference for the Steelers. And just like having playoff football in Pittsburgh would just be great. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that is all from us. Henry, thanks once again for coming on. Be sure to like the video, guys, and subscribe if you haven't already. And we will be back Saturday evening reacting to this game. So thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you guys next time.